Fate is a tenacious creature. It binds us to shackles that some cannot escape from, while others fight so desperately against it. The developers at Intelligent Systems aligned with the latter. After many years of failures, second guesses, and controversial moments, their fate had seemed to be sealed, with their beloved franchise fading away from history. But they couldn't accept this. Fire Emblem would go out with a bang, not a whimper. Through hard work, determination, and countless hours working long into the night, their efforts culminated in Fire Emblem Awakening, a game that put the collective efforts of everyone who had worked at the company for the past 2 decades into one small package. To them, they were content with their creation. Whether it failed or succeeded didn't matter to them. They had done their best in every regard. Yet suddenly, everything changed. Nearly 2 million people bought their last iteration, and boundless praise was heaped onto them for their endeavors. A surprise that nobody had anticipated. So, everyone involved now just had one question on their mind. What's next? After Fire Emblem Awakening's unprecedented victory, Intelligent Systems was shocked to find out that Nintendo wanted a sequel. They had thought that Awakening was to be the final game in the series, with or without commercial success. But Nintendo didn't want just any ordinary sequel. Oh no, they wanted it to succeed its predecessor in every shape and form. Quickly, Intelligent Systems came forward with a proposal that fits those specifications. Given the obvious code name of Fire Emblem 3DS2, the story they pitched was a winding narrative that stemmed from one pivotal choice that branched out into 3 different stories. In this tale, there were 2 kingdoms, one of light and one of darkness. The player would play as a prince or princess of that darkness who had been kidnapped by the wicked king of the dark at a tender young age. After learning of their fate, the player was given 3 choices: side with the light, side with the dark, or walk a different path than either. The choice would be their own. There were many reasons why Intelligent Systems chose this type of story, but the main reason behind it all was they wished to rectify the mistakes they had made in Awakening. Fans had criticized them less for the gameplay and graphics and more for the story in comparison to the past Fire Emblem titles. And they earnestly wanted to improve on that front. They not only wanted to create a narrative that appealed to newcomers, but one that veterans would come to like. And their hook would be that fateful decision the player would make. They wanted to weave a tale that would have players singing both sides of a conflict and allow them to understand both of the warring forces' ideologies and where exactly they're coming from. But to do this would require a massive amount of effort on Intelligent Systems' behalf. While the majority of the Fire Emblem Awakening team was coming back for this next project, their old workforce just wasn't enough. The amount of writing, characters, and world building needed would require 3 times the manpower than they had on hand. Kohei Maeda and his team just weren't enough. The most important area they needed help in was the writing department. After shuffling through nearly all of the video game writers they knew, they found the right man for the job. Shin Kibayashi, a prolific manga and anime writer. Yusuke Kazaki had known him through their shared editor and soon introduced him to the project. At first, he refused due to his tight schedule, but soon after playing Fire Emblem Awakening with his daughter, he excitedly agreed. Submitting an initial 10-page outline for each storyline, he quickly grew fond of the characters and ended up writing a 1,500-page outline for the whole game, driven by a need to create a high-quality story and partially to surpass his daughter's pressuring expectations. His writing ended up creating enough script to fill 2 complete books worth of material. Combing through the aftermath of his work would be Nami Kamuro, a writer who had previously worked on Fire Emblem Awakening, and Yukinori Kitajima, a writer for the Senran Kagura series. Him and his scriptwriting company, Synthes, would come together to write the 3rd neutral path and the many support conversations for this next entry, a choice that had dire consequences down the line. But what of the sound and art department, you might ask? For such a task, many talented team members would need to be on hand to make it a reality. The lead character designer, in particular, was a tough one to wrangle in. The dynamic duo of Toshiyuki Kusakihara and character designer Yusuke Kozaki had truly designed the look of the Fire Emblem franchise. Every entry had different character designers and art directors, and all looked different from each other with a small pinch of that trademark Fire Emblem style that unified them as a whole, but they lacked the uniformity that these two had implemented in Awakening, and the team wanted both of them back, especially Kozaki. The sheer amount of characters they would be asking for him to design made them wary as to whether he would be coming back or not. But they didn't need to worry. He was just ecstatic to get the chance to work on yet another Fire Emblem title. Designing such an exorbitant amount of characters would certainly prove to be a challenge. However, the sound department had even more work to contend with. Not only would they have to compose as much music as they had for Fire Emblem Awakening, but they would have to do it 3 times in a row and maintain the same level of quality throughout. Hiroki Morishita and Rei Kondo, the previous composers, wouldn't be enough. 3 others would have to be called in. Takeru Kanazaki, Yasuhisa Baba, and Masato Koda would all have to come together to create the next Fire Emblem masterpiece. Their centerpiece to this would be the game's main theme. Opposed to the traditional Fire Emblem theme, their new project would separate itself from the norm. Lost in Thoughts, All Alone, would be their creation. Written by Morishita, with lyrics by Kohei Maeda, and sung by popular Japanese pop singer Renka, the role of the singer was a crucial one both for the story and the song itself. The developers were looking for a singer who could do justice to their vision for the character, and when they heard Renka's audition, they instantly decided that she was right for the role, with several of them being brought to tears by her performance. Tears of a kind were common among the developers at Intelligent Systems, as many of the seeds that they had sowed in Awakening and several of the choices they had made along the way had begun to chip away at the mindsets of many of their developers. It all began with the simple act of splitting duties among different teams. The core development staff worked on the game's shared assets, while additional teams handled the level design. This split the team apart, but they were still working as one cohesive unit. However, as time went on, things began to change. Many of the developers ended up in 2 different groups, Team A and Team B. Team A and Team B formed because of their conflicting opinions. Team A wanted to return to a simpler time, when fan service wasn't at the forefront of the series, and they were solely on crafting better stories, characters, and gameplay. Team B, on the other hand, wanted to push the boundaries far beyond Fire Emblem Awakening, and increase said fan service tenfold to incredibly lewd degrees. Their argument was that some of their precious resources that needed to be focused on actual development of the game should instead be focused on more intimate aspects of the experience. They didn't advance the plot, they didn't make the characters more memorable, they weren't essential to the gameplay, but they did help bring in many players before. So, having more of that should be a good thing. One group saw success in a tactful approach, while another took a pandering route. These 2 opposing forces would fight back against each other for the entire development process, pushing back and forth on what the project came to be. Thankfully, the majority of the elements that made up the experience were left unaffected.